You did everything right. You stayed up through the fevers. You worked the extra shifts. You drove them to every practice, every recital, every first heartbreak. And now the phone sits on the kitchen counter, quiet as a stone. And you find yourself wondering, what did I do wrong? Maybe it isn't silence. Maybe it's worse than silence. Maybe your adult child calls, but only when they need money. Or they show up with a problem, a debt, a crisis, a demand, and somehow, by the time they leave, you're the one who feels guilty, you're the one apologizing, you're the one lying awake at 2 in the morning, replaying the conversation, trying to figure out where you went wrong. That ache you're carrying right now, I want you to know I see it. It is one of the loneliest pains in the world because nobody warns you about it. We talk about difficult teenagers. We talk about rebellious young adults, but nobody sits you down and says, some adult children will break your heart in ways you never imagined possible, and some of them will do it over and over again and make you believe it is your fault every single time. Stay with me today, friend, because there is a gentle way through this, and I promise before we're done, you're going to feel just a little bit lighter. Now, before I go any further, let me tell you who I am. My name is Pearl. I'm in my 70s. I raised 3 children of my own, buried a husband I loved for 41 years, and I have sat in the exact chair you are sitting in right now, heart full of questions, wondering if I had somehow failed the people I loved most. I am not a therapist and I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here as a friend, the kind of friend who will tell you the truth, gently, the way an old friend does over a cup of tea on a quiet morning. You've probably heard the advice before. Just set boundaries, just stop enabling, just have an honest conversation. And you've tried. Oh, you've tried. This is different. Today, we are going to name exactly what is happening. We are going to clear away the false guilt that has been sitting on your chest like a stone. And we are going to talk about real, specific, doable steps you can take, starting today to protect your heart. I want to go back for a moment, back to how it used to feel, or how you always hoped it would feel. There was a time, maybe when your children were small, when the house was full of noise and need and love all tangled up together. You imagined, the way most parents do, that one day they'd grow up and the love would grow up with them, that they'd call on Sunday evenings, that they'd show up at Thanksgiving and sit around the table and tease each other the way siblings do. That when you got older, they'd check in not out of obligation but out of genuine care. That's not a fantasy. For many families, that's exactly what happens, but for some of us, it didn't happen that way. And the slow, quiet dawning of that realization, one missed birthday, one conversation that left you feeling small, one holiday that ended in tears, that is a grief all its own. So let's talk about what is actually happening, because naming it is the first step to healing from it. Narcissistic adult children. And I want to be careful with that word because it is a real psychological pattern, not just a label we put on kids who disappoint us. Narcissistic adult children tend to behave in specific, recognizable ways, and once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. The first pattern is financial exploitation. This one is heartbreakingly common. It starts small, a loan here, a bill there, an emergency that only you can fix. And because you love them, you help. Of course you do. But over time, the requests grow larger, the gratitude grows smaller, and something quietly shifts. You find yourself afraid to say no. You find yourself dipping into savings you were supposed to live on. You find yourself lying awake wondering how you'll cover your own prescriptions next month. And when you finally gently say, I can't this time, the response is not understanding. The response is anger or cold silence, or a cutting remark that makes you feel like a bad parent for not giving more. That is not a child in need. That is exploitation dressed up in family clothes. The second pattern is emotional blackmail. This is the one that is hardest to see clearly because it hides inside love. It sounds like, if you really cared about me, you would, or after everything I've been through, I can't believe you won't. Or the silent treatment that goes on for weeks until you break down and call, apologizing for something you're not even sure you did. Emotional blackmail works by weaponizing your love against you. It takes the very fact that you care deeply and turns it into a lever. And the cruelest part is that it trains you over time to feel responsible for their emotions, to believe that if they are unhappy, it must be because of something you did or failed to do. The third pattern is the shifting of false blame. This one may be the most damaging of all because it rewrites history. Suddenly, your adult child has a version of their childhood that you barely recognize. Suddenly, every struggle they have ever faced was caused by you. The difficult marriage, the lost job, the financial mess, all of it somehow traces back to something you did or didn't do 30 years ago. And because you love them, and because you're a good person who genuinely wants to take responsibility for your mistakes, you begin to wonder. You begin to review the past like a film you've watched 100 times, looking for the place where you went wrong. And that review never ends because the goalposts keep moving. Now, I need to stop here and say something important, and I need you to hear it clearly. The fact that your child behaves this way does not mean you were a bad parent. I know that is hard to believe. The world has spent decades telling parents, and especially mothers, that every outcome in a child's life reflects the quality of their parenting. But psychology has moved well beyond that. Researchers now understand that narcissistic personality patterns are shaped by a combination of factors, and parental failure is only one small piece of a very complicated picture. Genetics plays a significant role. Studies on twins raised apart show that personality disorders, including narcissism, have a meaningful heritable component. Your child may have been wired from birth with a nervous system that processes empathy differently. That is not something you cause. Neurobiology matters too. The way the brain develops, the way certain reward pathways get reinforced over time. And yes, overindulgence can contribute. Not because you love them too much, but because none of us got a manual and sometimes we overcompensated out of our own wounds and our own love. But overindulgence alone does not create a narcissist. It is always a combination: nature, nurture, life experience, choices they made as adults. You are one thread in a very large tapestry. You are not the whole cloth. I want you to set down the guilt for just a moment. Not forever, just for the length of this conversation. Because guilt, when it isn't useful, becomes a cage, and you deserve to be free. Now let's talk about what you can actually do. These are not grand gestures, these are small, quiet, powerful choices, and you can begin today. Step one: stop explaining yourself. When your adult child accuses you of something that isn't true, the instinct is to defend yourself, to explain, to remind them, to set the record straight. I understand that instinct, but with a narcissistic adult child, explanations become ammunition. The more you explain, the more there is to argue with. Instead, practice this 9-word response. I hear that you feel that way. I disagree. That's it. Say it calmly and stop. You do not owe a lengthy defense of your entire life. Step two: stop being the bank. This is a hard one, but it is non-negotiable. If you have been financially supporting an adult child in ways that are damaging your own security, it has to stop. Not because you're punishing them, but because you matter. Your retirement, your medical care, your peace of mind, these are not luxuries, they are your right. The next time a request comes, try this exact phrase. I'm not able to help financially right now, but I love you. You don't need to explain why. You don't need to justify it. Say it once, say it warmly, and hold the line. Step three: let consequences land. One of the most painful things a loving parent can do is step back and allow their adult child to experience the results of their own choices. Not because you don't care, because you do. Real growth, the only growth that lasts, comes from facing consequences, not from being rescued from them. When you step in to soften every blow, you're not helping them. You are preventing them from ever developing the very resilience they need. Let the consequence land. It is an act of love, even when it doesn't feel like one. Step four: build your own life back up. This one is for you, not for them. If the relationship with your adult child has slowly become the center of your emotional world, if most of your days are spent waiting for a call or recovering from one, it is time to gently, deliberately shift that center. One phone call this week to a friend you haven't spoken to in months. 10 quiet minutes each morning with a cup of tea and something that brings you peace: a garden, a journal, a chapter of a book you love. One small act of beauty just for yourself. You're not waiting to be chosen. You are a full, living, worthy person right now, today. Step five: name the relationship honestly to yourself. You don't have to say it out loud to anyone, but in the quiet of your own heart, allow yourself to call this what it is. You have a child who is hurting you. That is true. It is also true that you love them, Both of those things can live side by side. You do not have to choose between loving someone and protecting yourself from them. Self differentiation, that's the word therapists use, means knowing where you end and they begin. It means understanding that their pain is not your fault and their choices are not yours to fix. Here's what I want you to come back to. Whenever the guilt creeps in at 2 in the morning, you gave them life. You gave them years of your love and your labor and your worry. You are allowed to grieve that the relationship is not what you hoped it would be. And you are more than allowed, you are entitled to protect the years you have left. You don't need them to apologize first. You don't need a family meeting or a dramatic reconciliation.